Hey everybody, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast from Backlog Banter where we review every single Best Picture winner, and we are oh so close to getting all of them. We review them in random order, we rank them on a big giant list, and in only a couple episodes, we are going to find out what the total, complete ranking of every single Best Picture winner is. That's right, it's the Quest for the Bestest. I'm Timo, joined of course by Abram, Tanner, and Tucker. And today, we are going to be talking about In the Heat of the Night, directed by, what was the director? Norman Jewison, starring Sidney Poitier, Rod Steiger, Warren Oates. This is a movie that made some waves when it came out in 1967. I want to hear what you guys have to say about it, because I think that this movie has a lot to say and can inspire some discussion. But before we do any discussing, we gotta, take a little look back at last episode, because we talked about Slumdog Millionaire from 2008. It got an average score of 7.9 and ended up at the 41st spot on our list. So pretty good. We enjoyed that movie. Had a good time. A lot to discuss there. I recommend you go watch that episode if you're in need of getting cheered up, or it's kind of wintry, so spend a lot of time inside. Cuddle up with the fire and your favorite Quest video. It's a great holiday. It's a great holiday activity. Okay, we got a featured comment, and then let's talk about this movie.
We do. You all failed us, and nobody commented on Slumdog Millionaire, but we can always count on our new third or fourth son. Probably fourth son at this point.
We're losing track at this point. We have a lot of outstanding alimony checks that we have to pay.
Mum Rumpumpull has returned to comment on our review of Gladiator. And they say, though I was very happy with this movie, one of the bestest, methinks, I couldn't help but think this was basically the same story as Braveheart, ...
Oh.
Now, I was alerted that Braveheart was the Best Picture winner. I didn't realize that, but I suppose we can use this little comment as a bit of foreshadowing from that episode happens in the next, 24 weeks?
Yeah,
something like that.
6 months or something like that.
Thank you for commenting.
Yes, we appreciate it very much. Before I did, there's one final piece of housekeeping. Little minor Quest announcement. We're gonna go on hiatus for the remainder of December after this episode comes out. We travel and do stuff. We're recording this pretty early, actually, but we'll be back in early January in the new year to do a couple regular episodes, and then we're gonna dive into the Oscar nominees, because those are coming out, and that's like my favorite time of year. Movie watching galore. So we're gonna take our winter break. We've done this like 2 years in a row now. It's how Quest works. But we'll be back. Fear not. Better than ever. So with that, let's talk about the movie. Who thinks they can tackle a plot synopsis?
Ooh, doggy dog. I guess it's thrown here on me. We are watching In the Heat of the Night, directed by Norman Jewison, as we've said, but this is a film starring the late, great Sidney Poitier, who is one of the classic black actors of Hollywood, and this is kind of what put him on the map, alongside a couple of other feature films. He stars in this film as Virgil Tibbs, a northern police detective who is going down to, Mississippi, I think, to visit his mother. And while he's there, he gets caught up in some racist shenanigans with the local Southern police officers who use his experience as the preemptive murder detective from Philadelphia to solve a murder that they aren't quite prepared to handle. And throughout this, racial shenanigans ensue.
That's one way to put it.
I love the way you put that. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a modern way to look at the structure and pacing and tone of this film.
Yeah. I'd like to start out giving my thoughts on this movie. Because in light of the shenanigans, as we're putting it, as Tucker put it, I guess, I was really looking back on this film. This film came out in 1967, and it's very rare that I get a sense of a film that made waves in its era, and those waves persist into watching it today. In the fact that the racial tensions of the Deep South in the 1960s are still pervasive in this film, not only in its setting, but in the tension it creates in each and every scenario in which our characters are interacting. I think this is a incredible film. with some incredible performances in it. The highest of high accolades should go to Sidney Poitier, of course, because he is absolutely fantastic in all the complexities that he brings to the character of Virgil Tibbs and his experiences as a well-respected homicide detective from the north, from Philadelphia, having to interact with these backwards, backwater, racist folks down in Sparta, Mississippi. And yes, I absolutely adored In the Heat of the Night.
Yeah, Tanner, I agree with you in large part. The only thing about this film to me that doesn't hold up is the awful transfer of it I watched at Amazon Prime, which was so grainy.
Yeah, we watched the 4K transfer on a Criterion Collection DVD.
Yeah, I watched the Criterion transfer, and it was really nice.
It's not good on Amazon Prime, but that's largely my only negative with the film. I think sort of structurally it gets a little too bogged down in plot by the time we get to the end, and I want to sort of talk about sort of the double fakes and everything that sort of comprise what is the last 25 minutes of the film. I was actually surprised to scroll over that runtime and realize I'm like, we got a lot of plot to go through, and I got 10 minutes left of this movie. But maybe some minor pacing issues aside, I found this to be a really remarkable and Abram core film. I mean, what do I love? I love my crime movies, and this feels right in step with them. I think that the script is very cutting. I think that its depiction of really vile and scarily contemporary racism is maybe more poignant than most depictions of racism we experience. I mean, I think of something like Green Book, which feels so like infantile in its writing in comparison to this sort of horror of like when Endicott slaps Virgil, which I think is one of the most harrowing moments.
The slap heard around the world
of the film. Yeah, it's that's different. But I found the film on the whole to be quite remarkable, and I think a lot of it comes down to the script and comes down to the performances.
I will piggyback off that. I'll say my favorite part of the film, which I enjoyed a good amount, was the performances. They really sell so much of this film. You get a lot of shots where a character just, looks and is reacting to something that has just happened, and the reaction just tells you so much more about what they are feeling and what the context is and how this all fits into the bigger picture without even having any dialogue, which is like, hell yeah, that's impressive to be able to communicate that through the facial expressions as well as the filmmaking. I think the direction here is very powerful. I do, however, think that the filmmakers are just totally unconcerned with this murder mystery after the second half of the movie. I think it doesn't matter to them because there is a more prescient, what they're really trying to talk about, which is this issue of race. And I think that you could bring in other themes, a rural versus an urban theme in this as well. But the film handles racism pretty well. For a movie that's a mainstream, Oscar winner, 1967, I think that this film is unique in its approach and by and large does well. I think, to just show my hand a little bit, you can always kind of go farther. You can always prod a little bit more. So I would maybe wish for even more examination, but the base that's there is very, very solid. And like you said, Tanner, holy shit, the theme is like so important today. It's kind of mind-blowing in that regard. Reminds me a lot of Gentleman's Agreement. It's a similar kind of,
forward-looking.
Yeah, exactly. Took the words right from my mouth.
Yeah. I agree about In the Heat of the Night. This is my second time watching this film, and when I saw it the first time for a class a couple of years ago, I was blown away by it then, and I was blown away by it again, being able to remember back to some of the things I liked so much about it, but be able to pick up a lot more, knowing it in the context of its history and in the context of a Best Picture winner. This film feeling like it is, as we're saying, forward-looking towards the other films we've gotten about the struggle of minorities in America and cultural issues and societal pressures that we consistently get films about in the Best Picture winners / nominees, but it's a rare few of them that feel this poignant and realistic about their content. And I think that is all squarely on the shoulders of our two main performers, Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger, whose dynamic is really the core of this film. And the culture clash that you get between not only a black man and a white man, but a northern man and a southern man, and a much more educated man and a less educated man, but they have common ground. And I think that the way that builds across the course of the film is what invests me so heavily. It's not just about a movie about two guys who are completely different but are forced to work together. It's they are forced to work together, but they already kind of respect each other, and that respect grows over the course of the film, and then it ebbs and flows as different characters and plot lines sort of intersect. And it keeps it really refreshing, combined with really, again, forward-looking filmmaking in that cinematography, in the sound design, in the score, like crazy jazz score. I really, really love this film. I think it's one of our top films we've watched.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think we should start with, I believe they call him Mr. Tibbs, if I don't...
They do,
if my memory serves me. But no, I think that you'll obviously need to start with discussing Sidney Poitier in the role of Detective Virgil Tibbs, which you don't see him for a good solid chunk of the beginning of this movie. You probably see him, 15 minutes in is when we first walk into the train station, I would say.
Is he the one who gets off the train
long,
in like one of the first shots, though?
Oh, yes.
He does, but it's just his feet.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it's him.
What's effective about it, and this goes back to sort of why I like a lot of the script, Timo, I think we're probably going to be circling the drain of the same issue with sort of the latter half of the plot level motion. But what's so effective at the beginning, coming into the film, knowing about it in broad strokes, but not really knowing its characters or how they reveal themselves or how their relationship evolves when Sam Wood, the police officer, meets Virgil in the train station. Like, okay, here we go. Black man in the racist South being framed for a crime he didn't commit, and he needs to prove his innocence. That's kind of where I saw the trajectory of the film going.
That's the trajectory of like the next 7 minutes.
Right. Yeah. Because on a script level, I think they hold the reveal of Virgil's identity as a police detective until just the right moment.
God, great moment.
Because there's this sort of tension of like, is he just keeping his cool because he doesn't want to get harmed in this interaction or anything? But even then, I'm like, this guy seems really nonchalant about everything that's happening. And that mystique is built up just enough so when he flashes the badge, you feel almost as humbled as Gillespie and the others in the station do. So I want to point out that writing moment in particular.
Because I'm a police officer.
Yeah. And it is those reveals that happen throughout the course of the film that keep it really surprisingly engaging. Like, you are waiting for that next key to drop. That's not even a proper metaphor. But I was waiting for it. Trust me. But watching how cool, calm, and collected Sidney Poitier plays Virgil Tibbs is why I think he's such a compelling main character, because it's every possible situation this guy could be put into that he's just standing there, the cool look on his face and his arm crossed, and he's like, I know what's happening here. And you can read in his eyes, like his thought process that is such a compelling part about that character, and it is even heightened even more when he does lose his cool a handful of times throughout the film, and you get these powerful moments of acting. But the fact that he's not just the cool police officer, but he's the really cool and calm police officer. Like, it's on another level. But that really makes him stick out, and he's unique because of it.
One other thing that I think makes him unique is not only how cool and calm and collected he is, but how intelligent he is. How he is just smarter than everyone else, and follows threads that other people maybe willfully ignore or maybe are just incompetent, and is able to navigate this really, it is his intelligence that allows him to get through these situations of incredible racial strife in which, like, literally everyone who he's dealing with is like, get out of town. The chief Gillespie's like, get out of here. We don't want you here. His ability to weave and get through all of those situations, I think, is just from this a character who is written very smart, but shows up very smart, and shows how, there's the scene when Gillespie's trying to get him to go for the first, he's trying to get him to come back, I think, right? And they're on the train platform, and it's the bit where he's like, I think you just want to prove that you're smarter and that you're better than all of this. But then, which is kind of, I was like, oh, that's like a dig. I don't think Tibbs would like this. But then he's like, but you can't resist. You can't resist solving this case. And I feel like that's like sets up a really interesting motivation for our character. He's got to solve the case so he can go home, but nobody is going to let him solve the case because of who he is.
Yeah, and the evolution of that over the course of the film is another really compelling part of his character. Because you watch him at the beginning, he wants nothing more than to just get out of here, get on his train, and get the hell out of Dodge. But then when he is pulled back in, you can start to see like the fire in his eyes light up as he's like connecting these dots, and he's like, I'm so close, just give me one more day. And of course, you've seen that in plenty of movies, but the fact that you're getting it from this guy who less than 24 hours earlier was like wanted nothing to do with this place. But he's been given this opportunity to not only prove his skill, but to prove his skill as a black man in the racially charged South that like charges all of this with like 3 different layers of motivation.
Yeah, another thing that shows his like determination and pridefulness in wanting to solve this is the fact that not only is, he gets hooked in it because he's a good detective and he wants to solve the case, but also he is moments away from the possibility of being lynched at any given moment in this town.
Yeah,
we see that numerous times throughout the plot. And he is still like, I'm staying here, I'm solving this case because I'm a detective, I'm good at what I do. And there's elements of pride in that, of course, but there's also elements of honor in that.
And maybe...
Yes. Go ahead, Timo.
Well, maybe he also sees how bumbling and how idiotic the cops are, and that there's if there's literally only one person in this town who's going to solve it, right? And all he wants to do is get on the train and leave.
Yeah, exactly. And I also want to shout out what was mentioned earlier about the calm and collected nature of Virgil and Poitier's performance as this character. I love the fact that you can just see the rage like barely contained in these interactions with these dumbass racist cops and racist townsfolk. He's just like, and it comes out in points too, like when he slaps Endicott. Yeah, and when he's like a cornered animal with those racist guys trying to murder him, he's swinging the pole around, fighting for his life.
He doesn't hit
taunting
them.
Him.
He like hits their tools, but he's not going to strike them.
He's fending him off, but he's got that fire in his eyes, like Tucker mentioned earlier. I think there is a really great rage contained within Poitier's performance that flares up at just the right moments in the narrative.
He's also cut from the Forrest Whitaker cloth of, I'm going to do an accent that I can't quite identify, but it sounds really cool. I've been watching Andor, and him as Forrest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera does an accent you could not possibly identify. And Sidney Poitier just also has such a unique delivery. And I think like that sort of like gravel that he brings to it is very detective, but it's also just very stark, especially in contrast to how everybody else sounds. Yeah. So I like that a lot, but I think his physical presence is a lot of it. And it is those 2 scenes, Tanner, that you mentioned, of this sort of really intense racism, wherein his physical presence, he becomes very large on screen, I think, very quickly. As you're saying, it's a switch that Poitier can flip. And I think that the tension in that scene, and to speak, Tucker, to what you're saying about sound design, as you hear the chains and you hear the banging of shovels and him hitting their tools, and just these silent shots of him as he's being backed up and jumping across. It's a film that is very, very physical. As much as I think it's carried by its script for a lot of the film, it's also just these like moments of really kinetic tension, like the slap, like the car chase when the bumpers are hitting. Just moments like that, I think, sort of build this sort of unease that the entire film operates with.
Yeah, and I think what that unease is that from the very beginning, the racial tensions and the racial hatred that is displayed in this town is very clear, and it's like not ham-fisted. It's not like Green Book where, it's like, oh, like these characters are like plain, like, oh, they're just racist. They are how they are, and you can tell that that's just like, some of them are racist because they really believe it, and some of them are just fitting in. They're just doing what the other people in town do. And you have the business owners who have, racial conflicts with, what's the murdered guy's name again?
I don't remember, Coleman.
The dude who was murdered,
Mr. Coleman.
Mr. Coleman.
Colbert.
Like Stephen.
Stephen Colbert.
He's gonna build a factory, and he's gonna have half the people work there be black, and some people don't like that in town, and so you have this setup that which is true. The underlying racial tensions in America can never really go away. They're always there, and they're especially always there for people of color. And this film, in taking Sidney Poitier's character's perspective, puts us in an uneasy state from the beginning, from his introduction as a character. And every single interaction I watch on that film, I'm like, when's this gonna just turn really ugly? And most of the time, like, it does. It goes there. And I'm appreciative that the film uses simultaneously like overt racism and subtle racism throughout it.
It's effective because, think about how many films that think about American racism through the lens of slavery. Mm-hmm. Or think about how often you're taught in American history that, and then the civil rights movement happened and then racism was gone. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. But I think this film is a very clear interrogation of this idea that American racism exists even once we determined that we were tired of it. America was tired of it, so we did the civil rights and everyone was fine. No. And I think this film is an interesting pushback on that. And you're right about these subtle moments, Timo. I think about the moment when we arrive at, Endicott is not a subtle character. What is one of the most chilling lines of the entire film is he's like, there was a time, he tells Virgil, there was a time when I could have had you shot. He literally says that. Yeah. But there's this amazing shot as we're coming into Endicott's farm where we see just like this industrial cotton farm. Mm-hmm. And we're like, well, we're in what, 1960s America? And this is what's going on here. It's this sort of like exploration of these vestigial sentiments, or like the close-ups of a guy that with their front license plate is just a Confederate flag.
Yeah, I was like, this film gets it. This film knows what that fucking flag means.
Right. I think poignant is a good word for it, because it's just this sort of like notion that these racial ideas and racial hatreds are like transient, and they're following our characters anywhere. This isn't a narrative about they call me Mr. Tibbs, amazing line. That's got some sort of accolade as one of the best film lines of all time. I saw that.
Yeah, I believe it's on the American Film Institute's 100 Greatest Movie Lines of All Time. I believe it's number 16 as of the latest update.
That's pretty high.
The number one line is the white Portuguese not a man, it's a ship from Batman vs Superman. Had to get that out of my system. But no, it's this idea, like the narrative is not about him proving himself and overcoming prejudices. It's about him being proved and arriving to a place where prejudices are not going to go away. And I think that's a much more interesting and real narrative situation, opposed to a sort of like dramatically created depiction of, and now we overcome racism in the movie ends. Yeah. Because that's not what happens.
No, there's not, but there is this interesting power dynamic shift across the course of the film, which I think is where all of these themes sort of come to rest on our characters, and then you can kind of separate those themes from the characters and the trajectory that they make across the course of the film, because the cops at this small police station that he ends up working with over the course of, 3-4 days, and it's really not a long time, but they start off, Sam Wood makes the choice, hey, black guy sitting at the train station by himself, he must be the guy who did the crime. And so we go through that whole process. Gillespie just wants him gone. He is saying overtly racist things to him. But across the course of the film, you see this power dynamic shift, because from square one, Tibbs is in the right morally, but he is not the one with the power. But it isn't until the power dynamic shifts where those cops realize that he's the only one that can get them out of this situation in a true and legal way, because he's the smart guy. He's literally the world's #1 homicide expert. Or I know I'm exaggerating, but that you see the interpersonal dynamic shift along with that power dynamic, because they do start to respect his intellect, and he is saying things in words about like chemistry and homicide solving that they haven't even thought of before.
The plant, the plant substrate, whatever the heck that is called.
But that proves his intelligence, but not only that, it like wins him respect. And so when you get lines like Sam Wood watching him come in to talk to like Harvey or whatever the guy's name is in the jail cell, and he calls him Verge, and you see that moment at nearing the end of the film where Rod Steiger and Sidney Poitier are like kicking back and like having a beer together in his home, and they really do have some sort of connection there. They respect each other. And that, in some way, is the answer to the we solved racism, but it's so much more nuanced than that. It's about the respect between two guys who share a vocation and the realization of intellect that they were not, quote unquote, allowed to recognize from a black man before that because they were so set in their racist ways. And the way that that is shown through, combined with the cinematography and the sound design, a lot of scenes that are like no music at all and no, like almost no sound at all, maybe like, some rustling or whatever, but it lets you focus on these people's faces and their minute actions and reactions to things that really like keys you into their thought process. And you can see all of this evolve across the course of the film. And that's really, really fascinating and super well done.
I think something that you said there about the way that the film, like, quote unquote, solves racism with Rod Steiger's character, with Chief Gillespie. The film doesn't do what a lot of other films that are trying to tackle racism do and say, okay, we've proven that he has at least stopped being out loud racist towards Virgil Tibbs. But it doesn't go and say, now, the chief is no longer racist to anyone. It doesn't do that because that's not true. That's not how these things work in real life. And it confines its discussion of how do these characters' racial thoughts change to just the pair of them. It's just about those two characters and how they see each other. Yeah. And it lets the rest of those characters' thoughts about the rest of the world be vague, and I think rightly so, because it would be disingenuous and cliche to go farther, I think.
And also, in terms of that, it also helps, on the other side of the coin, it helps Virgil overcome his prejudice against Southern people and like, oh, they're so backwater, they don't know anything. But like, obviously, Gillespie's not the worst of the worst in this town, and he is a guy who does want to run a clean town, and there is a respect there between the two of them in terms of what their abilities are. And Virgil comes to realize that maybe it's not all black and white as well. Well, But I really like how both of them ebb and flow over the movie.
I think Rod Steiger's worth talking about, unless you wanted to say something else, Tanner.
Oh, no, I was going to roll into Rod Steiger anyway, so go right ahead.
He's great. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
No, but what I wanted to add is that I think what's interesting about him is like he just kind of sucks. At his job. He's just bad at it. Mm-hmm. Like the mayor wants to fire him. He keeps pulling in the wrong suspect. And I think there's something sort of interesting about this guy who is used to the status quo. Mm-hmm. Really what his character has to do is overcome some sort of status quo. And it begins with the homicide. They have no idea what to do with a homicide. They got no idea what the time of death is. They're sending literally every police officer they have to go chase this guy up the side of like a hill, and then you see Rod Steiger just sitting in his car, slowly following him on the bridge. I think that's a great moment. Again,
and that great wide shot.
Yeah.
Oh, of the bridge and him running across. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, that's an amazing. Just logistically.
Yeah, that whole sequence.
Action, and it echoes for 30 minutes, and he starts running. Oh fuck! I messed up the zoom. I like it. It's really elaborately done, but I think the idea of Gillespie as this guy who what is he gonna do? If the film sets up this interesting, again, to speak about reveals, they set up this interesting situation early on wherein like the movie would have ended with Harvey being arrested, and then whatever,
that's it,
right?
Yeah,
that's it. Like that's all he can do, and I think that is an interesting component of that dynamic. Mm-hmm. They are equals in rank, but there is a major gulf between what they're capable of.
I will say though, I do think that Gillespie's character he's not just incompetent, he's nefariously incompetent. Like many times throughout the film, he reaches the point where there's a conclusion, and it's like an easy conclusion, and I think that he chooses the easy path, or tries to. He fails because he gets convinced that he's wrong. But a number of times, it's yet again a racist motivation. He is picking the easy path because the hard path is to think about what his relationship with Tibbs is, and to overcome at least a little bit of his own prejudices. And so I think that the film is wise in making him not just be stupid and incompetent, but like choose to be, because he's like, I don't want to, I'm thinking about maybe the second time someone wrong is brought in, and he's like, it's done. I mean, he said, Sam, it was when Sam, the police officers, thrown in jail, and Tibbs is like, there's no way he's it. Like, it doesn't line up. And the chief is like, but it lines up enough. Because if this mystery is solved, I can get you out of here.
Exactly. And it's worth noting, of course, that the conclusion of the film, which we should get to because Timo and Abram, you guys have some thoughts on that, is born out of Virgil following that lead himself. He seeks out that lead and he follows it himself, and that takes him to the ultimate finding out who done it. Ultimately, it is not he leaves Gillespie's house and he's like, I'm gonna go follow this lead, and that takes us into the very end of the movie. So yeah, I think that the nefarious incompetence is very important in Gillespie's character, and also the dynamic of the entire town. All of these side characters that we get. I love that, this is a small Mississippi town, and the mayor works at like a tractor supply store or whatever, and you have the big rich guy up on the hill with the boat with the suspenders and a bow tie. He owns a cotton farm and such. I love all the intricate players in this town. And Mrs. Colbert, I love the scene where Mrs. Colbert finds out that her husband died, and Virgil is trying to console her, but there's this overhanging thing of like, those cops saw a black man go into a room alone with a white woman, and we all understand the implications of the Jim Crow South in that situation. So yeah, there's just that overhanging tension of him like trying to console her, and the movements that he does in that sequence are also fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the physical acting just says so much. That dialogue, you just totally fumble the bag in that scene if you let those thoughts be played out through anything other than touch. Really, the touch and the actions tells you so much.
I speaking of touch, I also have another scene to shout out that is about Virgil's intelligence in sort of when he's really settling into the pattern of being a homicide detective. It's when he's inspecting the body of Mr. Colbert. And it's a close-up of his hands, just like checking out the hands of the corpse. And it's just like his hands are just so deftly moving over and grabbing, and they're so efficient. And you're like, this guy knows exactly what he's doing, and you're watching his hands just like every other racist white guy in that room is watching him do this. He's like, this guy absolutely knows what he's doing, and he's embarrassing me, the mortician, who said he died like 2 hours after he actually died.
Yeah. Well, I think that's another interesting sort of dynamic that Rod Steiger's character is like in the middle of, because we get that line from the mayor after Virgil slaps Endicott of like, the old police chief would have just shot Virgil right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or like when Gillespie rescues Virgil from those 4 guys that are gonna kill him in the big barn, whatever the hell they're
warehouse.
in. Yeah. There's this sort of idea that he sucks at his job. Gillespie sucks at his job. And so Virgil is his way out. But Virgil stands as antithesis to the community that he's a part of. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of damned no matter what he does. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the nice personal arc that I think avoids some of the tropes nonetheless is Gillespie finding this sort of acceptance within himself to support Virgil. Because ultimately I think that arc of friendship feels very organic. Especially because it does falter. The film, when we leave to go meet the woman who performs the abortions, and the film basically ends. Before that, when he's drunk, Rod Steiger is speaking in a racist manner to Virgil when Virgil starts asking about sort of his family life and things like that. So it's not better, and he's still clearly fighting this battle within himself, and I think that speaks to an extent about sort of like these just like cultural values that you get growing up in a rural town that are hard to shake even if you want to shake them. Because I think there's this feeling that Rod Steiger's character wants to move beyond these prejudices. Yeah. But he's stuck in a situation where those prejudices are all people know. And I don't get the sense that people from Sparta are really leaving Sparta very often. And I think, Timo, that's sort of where I think you can bring this point about the rural and urban into conversation with sort of the racial tensions. Because coming from a very rural place myself, you see how biases form and don't leave isolated communities like that.
Yeah. Abram, you bring up the community, and this is a good little insert point for a very interesting bit of trivia here. A little story, a little background. Sidney Poitier insisted that the movie be filmed in the North because of an incident in which he and fellow actor Harry Belafonte were almost killed by the Ku Klux Klan during a visit to Mississippi. That's why Sparta, Illinois was chosen for the filming location. Nevertheless, the filmmakers and actors did venture briefly to Tennessee to film the cotton plantation sequences. While down there, Poitier slept with a gun under his pillow for protection. He actually did receive threats from local racist thugs, and so the shoot was cut short, and the production returned to Illinois. So yeah, a lot of this was filmed in Illinois because of the very real 1960s racial tensions that this film, the very same ones that this film is depicting.
Yeah,
which is why I felt it is so like
that adds,
ingrained in that. Yeah.
That adds to the meaning of the film a lot to think about the fact that they couldn't even shoot it in the real place because of these localized racial feelings, racial hatred was there. And the film is contemporary. It shows 1967 when it came out. And so, yeah, wow. That is really interesting trivia.
A bit trivia offshoot of that, and this is just an interesting production thing. Because this film is set during the like hot, sweltering Mississippi summer, it was actually filmed in autumn in Illinois. So the actors had to put ice cubes in their mouth during night scenes to prevent their breath from being seen.
Whoa.
Like they put ice cubes in their mouth to cool down their breath.
Oh,
yeah.
Because
and then they would spit, and then they would spit them out during before the take started.
Huh.
Yeah, just a cool little thing that was going on set.
I didn't know that you could do that. Next time I'm on set and someone's like, "Oh my god, their breath's showing, and we can't have it show because it's the wrong," I'll be like, "I know a solution."
Yeah. This is what Quest is for. It's educational, guys.
It is education.
Now,
Let's talk about the ending.
You and the audience. Use that in your films as well.
Yeah.
I want to talk
Let's
about the ending because I will say I got confused by the plot at the end.
Yeah.
The last 25 minutes or so, we move a lot of places. A lot of characters are coming in, and this web of relationships really expands. They really weave a fairly large web by the time the film ends. And I was definitely, by the time the real killer is revealed and the motivations are displayed, I'm like, they're all explained, but it's like I kind of feel a little blindsided. I'm like, oh, I didn't really see this coming at all. What did you guys feel about the ending? Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think the reason that it does get really overwhelming, and now that I'm trying to really think about the themes and the plot lines that are going on in the background, the thing that sticks out to me, obviously it's the main core of the film, but is just Virgil trying to figure out the murder in the South, and Rod Steiger's character and the police. Like, that is what this movie is to me. But in terms of like complexity of the storylines, there is like 2 or 3 extra things going on. You've got the guy you've got Sam driving around at night and seeing Dolores Purdy naked in the window. You've got this history with Harvey and the guy who works at the diner whose name I can't remember, and this whole Ralph. Thank you. And this whole abortion storyline that sort of weaves through all 3 of these things. These are all interesting, and I do think that if you really break it down, there's probably really interesting through lines and character connections and thematic meanings of how Ralph plays into this and his relationship and dynamic with Sam, and then the history with Harvey and the abortion, all that. But it's all happens so fast and all at the same time that even though I've seen this movie twice, which is not a huge amount of times, but I have seen it, I've rewatched this film, I can't put it together. And frankly, I'm not sure if I really cared to, at least at the moment, because what really matters about this film is that 85% of it that is Virgil Tibbs in the South uncovering the murder. But when you lose the murder part, which is, and their dynamic, which is so core and essential to the entire reason I'm watching this film and enjoying it so much, and you get lost in the weeds of abortion clinic and Harvey and he knows this guy, and it gets too much, and I'm not sure it adds too much to my enjoyment of the film.
Yeah, I think you could. It's necessary for plot, but it isn't necessary for my enjoyment. I'm thoroughly impressed by the other parts of the film, and I can just kind of accept it, and it's there. That's how it ends.
Yeah.
I think the plot falls apart by the time it ends, and I'm trying to be less of a cinema sins viewer as I get older. Ding. I'm not trying to go ding as I'm watching a movie. A pun every time I find a plot hole when I'm watching things now. I don't care. But I think there's a difference between sort of things feeling kind of jumbled, and the film totally making me lose track of what's happening. And so I did, when the film wrapped, go, okay, I'm going to go to Wikipedia and look up the plot summary and make sure I understood what just happened, because I didn't really. And for me, that takes me out of the experience, because I think that it tries to get too clever with itself by the end.
Too many reveals.
I was having this conversation with my friend after we saw Glass Onion, which is a fantastic film, and what she was saying was that she didn't like it that much because it felt too obvious. She could see the killer coming. And what we were talking about is like, to me, a predictable outcome to a mystery is a sign of good writing. It's a sign that this is a thought I stole from Twitter, so it's not original. But it's the idea that all of the clues and pieces are woven throughout the narrative to where an active and engaged viewer can follow along and figure things out alongside the characters. That's the sign of a well-written script. It's very easy to, at the end of your movie, say, and the guy you never expected because we never show him in the movie did the crime. Yeah. Now, this guy who looks like Anthony Perkins is very creepy. And I'm like, he's probably the killer because he gives me the wrong vibe. But I'm making a vibe check analysis. Anthony James. I'm making like a vibe check analysis of why he's the murderer. And you're right. They do explain it. But the statutory rape abortion plot line into the I killed him for money so we could pay for the abortion thing, just like it all happens at the end. And that's why, as I was saying before, I think it's a pacing issue, because I think you could have stretched these elements out further, aside from them just being like these hints of like the sexy woman in the window and Sam Wood's a creepy guy.
She's 16.
Well, sexy underage girl in the window. Don't.
That was not. By the way, that was not better. The problematic statement. No.
Shit.
Anyway.
Well, okay.
I take it. Fine.
Yeah. I would assume.
In the context of the film.
I would say the legally aged actress who plays the character in the film in the heat of the night, being sexy in the window at the beginning of the movie, because I'm like, this got to be just like a love interest. It's gonna be the femme fatale of the narrative. But no, she ends up being, to Tanner's point, 16 and pregnant as the movie ends. I'm like, well, I feel like we got a beginning point and an end point. But what about all of the stuff that connects those? And that's what I was missing.
Yeah, and I think
just
the reason
just to point out, Quentin Dean, who plays Dolores Purdy, was like 23 at the time of filming. So
sure. Okay. She does not look 16. No way, no how. But I do think that the reason that like all of this stuff is in the movie, like if you write out these plot lines, I don't think there are actually plot holes, although I'm not entirely sure. But I think the reason that it doesn't tie together for me is very little of that feels personal to Virgil Tibbs. It is his discovery of the murder, and a few of those tangential moments, like the small friendship that he builds with Harvey through their interactions, or Sam Wood, who's a pretty consistent player in the film. These things feel connected to Virgil because we've seen him grow to learn about them across the course of the film, but we don't see him grow to learn too much about these other things that end up becoming so core and important at the end. He sees Ralph once, he sees Purdy once, and the fact that those aren't personal to him makes them feel like, well, why would he know so much about this? Of course, he's a really smart guy, and he's thinking 6 layers above the rest of us here in the audience, but that disconnect, that's the first time that I really feel the disconnect from his detective intelligence, because the movie's really good at not having him like verbally explain what he's doing every step of the way, but inferring it through that filmmaking and his actions and the way the story flows, that you can follow his choices and his intelligent way of solving a murder. But there's like 6 layers that we skip in that last 10 minutes that are all happening in his head, that when at the end he's like, checking the purse, and he was this, and that was that, and then the movie just like dissipates. That is a really strange disconnect that, frankly, the more I think about it, is a problem with my enjoyment of the film, but also it's like it's so little of the film that I barely even remember it.
And it just seems to me like it's not the parts of the film that make it important or remembered today, or even why it won. Like 20 minutes into this movie, I was like, yeah, I know why this won Best Picture. Like, it's, I think the Academy, for better and for worse in their choice making, they are consistent in the kinds of movies that they pick to win. And this fits into that category of a social issue movie.
Yeah.
And I think that, luckily for us, this is a rather good one. But that's why the film was picked, not because of this ingenious murder mystery plot that the film really lets us kind of float along.
I'll throw in my 2 cents on the whole ending thing, because I'm glad you guys have all expressed this, because I felt like I was an idiot after I finished watching the movie. I was like, I didn't understand the ending. But to me, I do align closely with what Tucker is saying, is that, we talk a lot in this about what will I remember from X Best Picture winner that we're reviewing right now. And it's not like the ending 10 minutes. I'll remember maybe it didn't make a lot of sense, but it didn't like click together when I was watching the movie. But as long as it makes sense when you write it out in a Wikipedia description, what does it really matter to me, actually? Because I will be thinking about how the contemporary racial themes are felt so powerful however many decades later. Sidney Poitier's performance, the complex interactions that he has with Rod Steiger's character, with Rod Steiger's Gillespie, with the sequences that are set to this hot jazz blues score, and the really cool cinematographical choices that are made, of the wide shot on the bridge, of tracking the camera through a tiny little hole in the door in the jail cell or something like that. I'll remember all of that. I will not remember that Ralph killed the guy for money so he can pay for an abortion for his 16-year-old girlfriend, and that all happens in the last 5 minutes of the movie, or the last 10 minutes rather. I won't remember that, probably. But we've talked about it so much that maybe I will. Maybe you guys have weaseled your way into my brain.
I think where I come down on it is just for me, it is the sort of artistic and thematic elements of a film that ultimately elevate movies to my status of being among my favorites of all time. But there is still a sort of for me, a base level entertainment, plot level enjoyment that I need to have first. And I just think that when by our own admission, the end of your mystery ceases to make sense, to me, that's a hefty knock against the film. It doesn't make this go from good to bad, but I think it makes it go from excellent to great. How about?
Yeah. I probably will ding it, but just not a whole lot, as will be evident in my score when I'll ding it. Of course.
Ding.
I do also want to mention that this film is lit, because I love the lighting choices in this film.
God, Abram, is there anything specific you want to say about the lighting?
So close.
Yes,
okay,
there actually is. There's a noir bent to the aesthetic of the film, very clearly. Yeah, and there's a couple shots in particular that I love. There's a moment that I think is great on sort of this thematic and character level of leaving Ralph's creepy diner. We're leaving the squad car to figure out Sam Wood's path back. And it's Gillespie that gets in the back in the back of the patrol car. Yeah. And there's this moment where we kind of make eye contact. We're like, oh, Sam Woods is a racist. He's like, why isn't the white guy in the front seat? Right? That's basically the implication of the scene. But at the same time, it's also just this moment of beautiful cinematography where we look back and we've got Rod Steiger framed through the grates of
the lattice.
The lattice that separates the great silver dollar word, Tucker. Nicely done.
Hey up.
And that's just that is so beautifully executed in its use of contrast and clever lighting. So I just wanted to shout that out too.
There's another moment of very similar to that where when Tibbs sits down in the jail cell bed for the first time.
Yes.
And there's this shadowed grid on the top third of his body. Really cool moment. And it keeps him framed in this dark light, so it makes him ominous to Harvey. I also really like how this film plays with nighttime lighting, as we've been talking about a couple of these things, and the use of shadow, but it's also plays into, unlike how noir films, literally black and white noir films were, it uses color in interesting ways where this it's all dark, the sky is pitch black, and most of the frame is lit by colorful lights, whether that is signs, that is some sort of neon thing, that is red reflecting off the camera or whatever it is. There's pops of color in the rich black of the night that is unlike what we see for most films, because most films avoid shooting at night, or when they do, they're playing into someone hiding in shadow. But there is good use of lighting even in the nighttime sequences, which I think is really creative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll say,
Tucker, sorry, go ahead, Timo.
The cinematographer of this film, Haskell Wexler,
Yes,
real
it's a name.
well known and very respected in the industry cinematographer. He made the only other thing I've seen of his is he made a documentary about how horrible it is that film workers get like zero sleep on when they're working on sets and drive home sleep deprived. They made me watch that in class as like to dissuade me from scheduling my shoots where my crew would get no sleep. So I guess it worked. I don't know. Thanks, Haskell. This film is really well shot. My favorite shot is the last shot. There's many reasons why. It's super impressive. It's got a train in it. It starts at the very, it's great train action in this film, I gotta say. Tucker, great train action is like trains in the movie. Okay, they're not in like every movie, so you gotta give pluses when they show up. But that ending shot where it's like so zoomed in, it's like you're just looking at them in the window, and then like it like whoom, it like pulls out, and then you're like, oh my god, we're like way far away from the train, and then like it pulls out even more, and you're like, that was shot from a helicopter.
Yeah,
and
they somehow match the speed of the train to get like, because at the beginning it's just a frame of him in the window. It's like, okay, sure, yeah. I can understand that, like, they got this frame of the train, but the train is actually moving, and then it keeps pulling back, and then you're in a moving helicopter. Like, how the fuck did they do this?
and then you pull back more, and you see the Earth.
Yeah, and this is the first guy to go to space.
Yeah,
Norman Jewison. When the first guy on the moon? I don't know, somewhere around there.
The first guy to go to space,
or 69.
Yeah, but was
I learned that
was
from
the
First
moon.
Man.
That was the moon. First guy in space, I don't know. That was a Russian guy.
Yeah,
anyway,
risky.
Timo, thank you for bringing up Haskell Wexler, because I'm also thankful for Abram to bring up the lighting. You guys have weaseled your way into my brain and into the trivia that I have written down here. This was one of the first major Hollywood films that was lit with proper consideration given to a black actor's skin tone.
Yeah.
Haskell Wexler recognized that standard lighting used in filming produced too much glare on most black actors and others with dark complexion, so he toned down the lighting to feature Sidney Poitier with better results. So, it just slots in nicely with the typical conversation that we brought up here.
Yeah.
And speaking of something that's not going to fit in with the conversation we're having, Tucker, you brought up the scene where Virgil is in the jail cell with Harvey, and he's kind of sitting there with those like noir jail cell shadows across his body, and he's just locking eyes with Harvey as Harvey's like, "What are you doing in here? You can't be in here!" Blah 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 blah. And he's just locking eyes with him. He's got that cool collected Sidney Poitier face on. Then he says, "Keep cool, Harvey. I'm on your side."
Yeah.
Great delivery in that.
I think that's the moment in which I looked over you and I'm like, this guy gets my coolest cucumber award.
Oh yes.
I have the wins and noms. If you'd like,
I also have the wins and noms.
Well, I'm gonna do them this time.
Wait, one second, Tucker. I do have one last thing I want to bring up. Just a tiny little thing. It's after Endicott slaps Virgil and Virgil slaps him back, and they walk out. I love that. You see Endicott crying. God, what a great little addition. What a little bitch. I love that.
It's a great moment. I mean, that slap is very culturally important to not only this film, but to, like, spurring the racial tensions of this time, and why it still feels so relevant today is this was I believe the first time you had seen, people something at like this time had seen a black man slap a white man or physically attack a white man in a film on the screen like this, in like
and not get killed for it.
And the defensive, exactly, not get killed for it, and like frankly be rewarded for it in the context of the film. And so that is the moment of this film, alongside They Call Me Mr. Tibbs. But for this film, it was nominated for a bunch of awards, but it actually won the vast majority of them. The only ones it did not win were Best Director for Norman Jewison and Best Sound Effects by James Richard. It won Best Picture. It also won Best Actor for Rod Steiger.
What?
We can talk about that in a second. It was based on... It won Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Sound, and Best Film Editing, edited by Hal Ashby. Very interesting. He's another famous director.
And my favorite.
Another famous person I've never heard of.
Oh, come on. You guys know Hal Ashby?
Being There.
Yeah,
maybe.
Shampoo.
Just not the name,
Harold and Maude.
Okay.
Yeah, there you
Harold and Maude Go Large.
So what's the deal with this? What's the deal with that Best Actor What were they thinking?
Sidney Poitier was robbed in 1967 by the Academy across the board. 1967, also the year of release of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Sidney Poitier also not nominated for that movie, but Katharine Hepburn was, and she won.
Yeah.
And so
she's great in that movie.
Yeah.
He's also great in that movie.
He's
It's
also
stupid that he was nominated for neither of them.
Yeah, he's also great in this one, and even a nomination. And God, this film, is so deeply entrenched with the racial context of the Deep South when they should be talking about the racial context of Hollywood, California, not nominating Sidney Poitier. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's like inexcusable. Come on.
Yeah.
Rod again, and we're on a first name basis. Rod is good.
He's not as good.
Sidney Poitier is way better.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about Gillespie, sorry to praise Gillespie in this so saccharine moment, is that he chews gum like constantly, and
Tucker?
and that's like replacing chewing a cigar or something like that you would see detectives or cops do in other movies. But so he's like, he's a little toned down. He's just chewing gum, but that plays into his character's reaction so many times where something will happen. He's like, stop chewing his gum, and you can like see the moment click in his brain. He's like, uh-oh, or like realize something's happening, and it's like because of the gum in his mouth. I think that's a great choice.
Tucker, I knew you guys were weaseling into my brain, my trivia brain here, because I have trivia about the amount of gum that Rod Steiger chewed on set.
16
let's
pounds.
Play a little game here. Let's play a little
16
game.
pounds. That's my
No.
bet.
How many packs? How many packs of gum did they go through on the set of In the Heat of the Night?
Well, one pack's probably about a quarter of a
105?
pound, and so we take 16 times
Okay,
4.
Tucker's locking in 135.
I'll say in like the 80s. I don't know, 84.
Okay, the 80s.
Why not?
Abram?
5,000.
5,000. Okay, we got a wide range of possibilities here, but if we're going by, Price is Right rules is close without going over. So Abram, you're out. He chewed through 263 packs of gum in the production of this film.
Jeez. That probably is about 16 pounds of gum.
Yeah, honestly.
Do the math later, Timo.
Yeah.
We have to find out how much the average weight of a pack of gum was in 1967.
Oh man.
Hey,
Good
I'm
stuff.
almost
Very good
graduated
stuff.
from college. I'm not doing any more math in my life.
Great
man.
point. Me
There you
neither.
go.
Well, should we give this movie a score? Should we find
Let's do a little
out?
math.
So.
Let's
No.
No. Abram, you're greatly misunderstood. We don't do the math. The spreadsheet does the math.
It's true.
I am greatly misunderstood, though, Timo. That is true.
Yeah, just generally.
I put a number in already.
Okay, I'm putting a number in. My number's ready. I put it in. Let's find out.
Ready?
In 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Ooh, very, very close. Okay, the average score is 9.2. So we're going to rocket way up to the top of the list. But the point breakdown from top to bottom, Tanner gave it a 9.5, Tucker gave it a 9.4, Abram gave it an 8.9, and I gave it an 8.8. So we got two little buddies, me and Abram, and I guess on the other side, Tucker and Tanner.
Yep.
Let's
No
see.
ties,
No
unfortunately.
ties. But
No.
something I'd say even more exciting than a tie.
Yeah.
Boys, we got a number 10.
Do we get a new
Cracked
number?
the
We
top
do get a
10.
new number 10. You're right. Wow.
This
It
is our
is
new
the
number
number
10.
10.
Yep.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
dude.
I love this movie. God.
Yeah. Very well deserved, I think. Wow.
Yes, it would be above No Country for Old Men, below The Apartment.
In good company.
Great company. Great company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On one side.
We don't need your sass.
Okay.
Well, should we visit the spin wheel for one last spin to set us up for our little hiatus to think about for a good long time what film we're going to watch next? I think.
Just give the audience plenty of time to watch whatever movie this is going to be.
I'm going to watch 5 minutes of it a day, every day until we record.
Oh, that's smart. Well, it depends how long it is, of course.
Yeah.
Watch with the family over the holidays, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
find
what
out.
movie am I watching with my mom, Timo?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Tanner, would you do me the honors?
Wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital? Is it on real? Wheel, what's your deal?
And we're going to be looking at the number 4 movie on our list. There's only 9 left, so
Hello.
what does that mean?
Yeah.
What do we got?
Sorry, I thought the sentence had more to it. We're going to be watching the 1984 Best Picture winner, starring F. Murray Abraham and directed by Milos Forman. This is Amadeus.
Amadeus. Ooh. Been looking forward to this one.
Rock me, Amadeus.
Yeah, at a cool 2 hours 40. So,
there you go.
Prep yourself.
Do the math. That might be 6.5 minutes each day. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone excited for Amadeus? Anyone mad about us watching Amadeus?
I'm excited, actually. I've seen a single scene from the film, and I don't remember which scene it was, and I don't remember what context it was in. So I'm in for a treat, really. Get to watch a new Best Picture winner.
I have also never seen it. I'm very excited to watch this one. This is one of the highly anticipated ones we had left on our list. But Abram was right. If you watch 5 minutes of this every day from here until we come back, you will have completed it.
That's like they say, oh, you need more money. Well, just save a little bit each day. It's kind of like that. Just watch a little. I was gonna say like, oh, it's the time you would take getting a Starbucks cup. That's not a worthwhile joke.
No.
if you watch 5 minutes of Amadeus a day, you can afford a house or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as long as you stay away from the avocado toast.
And an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Oh, actually, no, hang on. It'd be 5 minutes a day if you started watching it on the day that we're recording this. So sorry, folks, you should have started like a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Gotta catch up.
How I afforded my Blu-ray copy of Amadeus in 3 easy steps. Step 1, my parents bought it for me.
Step 2, watch 5 minutes a day.
There you go. Okay.
Well, we'll be back in the calendar year 2023 for more Quest for the Bestest. We're so close. We're rounding the final corner, the final page flip of the calendar. We're going to the very end. We're going to start it off strong with Amadeus. Looking forward to it. And, I won't lie. I'm looking forward to a little break here. It's good to rest for a while, even though Quest is pretty leisurely for me. But
yes,
looking forward to it. All you guys, enjoy your breaks. Have a good time while you're away, doing your travelings, your crazy things. And we will see you all next time on the Quest for the Bestest next year. Until then, peace.